public speaking and facing the media. I mean, I have been coming in media at the age of 5 years, So there's nothing great about coming on media. Is not something new to me. Because we always been watched. There's paparazzi is always there following us, what we are doing, and also I've been coming on newspaper. Those days there's no television, but I've done newspaper coming in the stories since I was 5 or 6 years old. So I was able to deal with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Ram sir, you can now come online. My team is giving me a cue to make this live. Yeah, there you are. So yes, we are officially live. My team has given me a cue. And I think it's time for me to formally kickstart this very interesting session. Thank you very much, all of you who have logged in today. Thank you very much for supporting ObserveNow in our quest to find stories that matter. I'm Tanya Tikku. I'm the editor-in-chief and co-founder at ObserveNow. ObserveNow is India's first knowledge-based news app, now live on Google Play. We produce knowledge-based news information in 120 words. And as a part of our editorial policy, we do such live investigative journalism stories from different spheres of life, where we speak with industry leaders and experts in the area and understand how various policies impact us. Today, we are doing a very important live story on recognizing and understanding the LGBTQIA community at workplace. So just to put things in context for people who have just joined us and who are, I can see, joining us from various social media platforms as well. Welcome all of you. It was 6 September in 2018, and there was a historic decision by the Supreme Court of India, and it ruled in favor of Navtej Singh Johar versus Union of State of India that Section 377 was unconstitutional. And I'm using a direct quote, which says, insofar as it criminalizes consensual sexual conduct between adults of the same sex. But today, here we are, 2.5 years later almost, the inclusion of LGBTQIA community in workspaces is still a gray area in corporate India. And there are not many well-defined policies to safeguard their rights and interests as well. So LGBTQIA community in India at workspace is still struggling to keep up. There are some really interesting and unfortunate facts about that as well. There is a VC Morgan Stanley report actually that I was reading, and it says that the spending power of the entire community, the LGBTQI community worldwide, is 3.7 trillion. And we lose out a lot of that power because of our homophobia. And if I were to put this in context of India as well, so there's a World Bank report that actually suggests that in 2015, $32 billion were lost to the Indian economy, which is around 1.7% of our GDP because of our homophobia. So I think it's a very unfortunate incident, and I think it's a very unfortunate space as well that we are in right now. So doing a story like this for a media platform, ObserveNow, is very important right now to generate awareness and bring real causes and real issues to light. So today I've curated and handpicked a very specific panel of experts to be a part of my investigative story. Please allow me to welcome my panelists for today. May I welcome Mr. Manvendra Singh Gohil, India's first openly gay prince and founder of Lakshya Trust for LGBT. Hello, sir.
Hello.
May I introduce Mr. Ramakrishna Sinha, founder at Pride Circle. Hi, sir.
Hi.
And Mr. Vikas Khoka, head HR at Dhanuka Agritech. Hi, sir.
Hi.
Welcome, all of you. Very interesting topic, very interesting times to talk about it as well. I think I'm not going to wait any further, and I'm just going to jump into your opening statements because I'm really excited to talk as much as I can about this. So can you please, all of you, make your opening statements by sharing your journey with us, the stigma attached to it, and how you overcame and how you came up in the open. So we'll start with that to lay the context when eventually we move forward to the policies required for safeguarding the interests of the entire community in India and how we can really champion in the rights space there as well. So Manvendra sir, I will go first to you. How about you start?
Yeah, my journey has been very challenging and full of a lot of ups and downs and controversies and scandals, and because I being the first member of a royal family in the world to openly come out as gay was was creating history, I would say. And but even though the initial stages were facing a lot of hurdles, obstacles, my effigies getting burnt and people protesting and my parents going against me in the newspapers and disinheriting, disowning. At the end of the day, it was my honesty which I held to and which I was greatly inspired from people like Mahatma Gandhi that kept me fighting for the rights of the underprivileged, for the people who have been deprived of their basic rights, rights to dignity and respect, being respected. So that was something which paved my way. Fortunately, I was noticed by a lot of international media, and my invitation to by Oprah Winfrey was a big turning point in my life. I was the third Indian to be invited by her, and her news went viral. It went all over the world. For the first time, people out of India came to know the facts about the issues of the LGBTQIA community in India, and that opened invitations coming from other parts of the world. And I ended up going to so many countries all over the world, meeting very, very highly influential people, political persons, government, judges, Hollywood, presidents, prime ministers. Lot of advocacy happened on a global platform, and yes, and it has definitely paved the way, as you rightly mentioned. This historic judgment which came about 6th of September 2018 has been, I think, the combination of various advocacies done by various people all over the world.
Right.
It was not just an Indian judgment, but it was influenced by many people all over the world who have great influence on the Indian mindset, has managed to give us this historic judgment. And yeah, so that has been my journey. But as I say, at the end of it, I always say one thing: truth always wins, and I always will support, be honest, and to myself and to others.
That's a very good thought to end this part with. So tell me, you've met so many influential people, and we have read a lot about you visiting different places, and you've got that platform to inspire people. You've got that platform to make a change, and you're also working with. You've also started this Lakshya Trust as well. So can you tell us a little bit what you do with the trust, and how have you used your position of royalty and being so influential in India, covered internationally? How have you used that position for the benefit of the community?
Lakshya Trust came about because, see, in those days, HIV came into the country, and then government realized that vulnerable populations like the homosexual and the transgender population need to be covered with the help of organizations. And that's how our organization, Lakshya Trust, was born 20 years ago. And we were the first ones in Gujarat to have got, were in partnership with the government of Gujarat under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And we are still getting funded by them for HIV prevention work amongst the men having sex with men and transgender community, which was a big thing, because getting government recognition at the time when Section 377 was not yet amended was a very good way to start with. And of course, later on, we moved beyond HIV. We have worked for mental health issues, the aging issues. We were the first to work even for the wives of gay men. And we are again the first organization in India.
I think that's very progressive. Yes, so what work did you do for the wives of the gay men?
Yeah, because see, even Oprah interviewed me. She pointed this out to the audience that 80% of gay men in India are married to women, and most of them are married because of family pressures, emotional blackmail by parents. So important, when we work for the homosexual population, we ignore the women also. We start working for these women. They came to us, and they kind of they told us that we come to know our husbands are gay. So how do we deal with that situation? So that's how we started working. And from the HIV point of view, these women become more vulnerable because they don't know their husbands are having an affair with another man. And then the condom usage also becomes low once you're in a married relation, and if the husband gets infected, then he can easily infect the wife when they are not having a protected sex. So it was very important for us to work for these women to see how we could prevent the infections from spreading.
I think a very progressive move as well. I think because there are a lot of people who are associated and who are a part of this entire ecosystem when somebody decides to come out of a closet, and especially in India, in a country where it was still illegal 2 years back, even in the 21st century. I think a lot of progressive moves need to be taken. I will, sir, come back to you, and I do have another set of questions for you. But in the meantime, can I please move on to my next panelist, Mr. Ram? Sir, your journey, and also tell our audiences about the work you're doing at Pride Circle, stigma attached to it. How did you overcome any incident that you'd like to share with us?
Sure. So the aspect of why we even need to have a separate organization looking at LGBT inclusion specifically, or when we did India's first ever LGBT job fair in 2019, like why do we need a job fair for specifically around a certain community? So I think
Right,
that, as you said rightly, right, there's a lot of stigma around identities. People assume people don't have access to LGBT people, so they have heard through press, through movies, through other sources, and this is mostly misinformation, and that leads to
right,
a lot of stigma and barriers around having a conversation around, and the very basic fact that my child is gay, and I am more worried about what other people will think about it if they come out, if other people get to know about it, than trying to understand how can I support my child. Most parents go through that concern, right? And
right,
how will they survive in the society, because society can be so brutal at many times, especially if you're visibly different, especially the trans community, right? And for
right,
instance, whenever we talk about LGBT, a lot of people just have this curiosity, like why do trans people beg, or why do they do that kind of work, why can't they get a job? This is a very common question, and I want
right,
people to realize that why are people on the street in the first place? These were kids who were beaten up in their own houses for being different, right? This was a boy somewhere who wanted to play with a doll, who wanted to grow a longer hair or walk a certain way, and that was not acceptable. And that child chose to run away from home, leave the shelter of a safe space, घर की छत छोड़ दी उसने, to preserve his own identity, to preserve their gender identity. So understand how difficult that gender dysphoria is. Like every single time you're reminded that what you feel inside is not what you're able to present to the world, and that child has to
mm,
run away to protect their identity. And they gave their home, they did not have access to education or a safe school or all of that, and they had to fend for their livelihood, right? And now
right.
also, while there are a lot of trans people with skill set, how many of them are, there was a report which said that 90% of trans people face economic exclusion or barriers when it comes to participation in economic activity. And these barriers are simple things like a security guard of a company not letting you in, right? These could be barriers like a auto wala charging you extra for dropping to the same distance they will charge to someone else. And how many of
Right.
us are willing to go and dine in a restaurant where all the servers are trans people, right? So I think a lot of our own mental barriers we need to relook at and see, hey, why do I have this issue? Why do I feel this way? And then
Mm,
probably engage with people. I think the best way to learn about other communities is to have a conversation. Go out, meet LGBT plus people. If you don't know people, read stories. I also compile a series of stories on LGBT plus people and allies called 101 Coming Out Stories from India. When you read these
right.
stories, you'll get a sense of who are these people, what their lives are, what kind of careers they have, what kind of work they do, right? It builds that relatability.
Mm,
And now, thankfully, the movies and the series content is also getting much better with better representation of LGBT plus people. So that relatability is definitely changing.
yes.
Coming to Pride Circle, effectively, we help organizations get better at LGBT inclusion, how to really create a workplace culture where there's no systemic barriers, right? It is not about trying
Right.
to do something extra for LGBT plus people. It's about by default when we have built a system with
Just doing the
certain
basics.
ignorance. Yes. See, I mean, like a very
Mm.
simple question I'll ask, right? Like, do we talk about sexuality in the workplace? And everyone will say, no, 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 we don't talk about it. But then I say, do we talk about marriage and our kids and wife? They said, yeah, yeah. The fact that I'm getting married to a woman is a function of my sexuality. If I was getting married to a guy, it's not the
Right.
same, right? And I can't invite
Right.
all my colleagues with same age. And they're like, oh, okay, that way. So there are a lot of systemic barriers which has come in because people never thought about building a system when they
Mm.
were looking at LGBT plus people. So at Pride Circle, we help organizations realize how to make that tweaks in the processes and various other things they do to make it an inclusive workplace. And we also
Mm.
work with the community to really find inclusive employers because there are a lot of talented people who are suffering in silence in workplaces which are not the most inclusive. And it's important that we are able to match them with companies which are safe, where they are valued for the skill set and not discriminated because of the sexuality or gender. And the last thing, because this is happening just on 10th of December, is we launched India Workplace Equality Index, which is basically a comprehensive benchmarking tool for companies to assess their progress for LGBT plus inclusion, also get a sense of how they score
Mhm.
compared to other organizations. It brings a little healthy competition and I get a sense of
Mm.
where companies are. So that is coming out on 10th. I'll invite all of you to be a part of it.
Absolutely, I think very important as well. Very progressive thoughts there, Ram, with Pride Circle. I think you've taken up an issue at such a right time, at such a right stage. I think half of the people are not even aware of things. Can you maybe quickly share one or two live examples as to what kind of barriers, you interact with a lot of people for the communities who are very well educated, skilled, and talented, wanting a job. Maybe a couple of barriers that they face at workplace they might have shared with you. Could you bring
Sure.
that to light?
Absolutely. So why? So a lot of things people why people can't come out of the workplace, right? It's because of what is the conversation around them. Like if people around them are making fun, are they cracking LGBT jokes? Are they making fun of the whole thing? Then you understand that these people will not understand. And the challenge is if they come out, then there would be repercussions on their career in terms of what kind of work they get, if there be more jokes and more bullying at the workplace, right? That is one aspect. Second aspect is where a candidate is rejected at the interview stage itself because they're visibly different, and the hiring manager and the team feels that uh, I don't think this person will be a culture fit despite them having the right skill set and everything else, right? uh, the third piece would be around support structure at the workplace for them to really grow. If there are no anti-discrimination policies at the workplace, if there's no gender neutral posh policy, even if the LGBT plus person is bullied, they don't have people to reach out to report to and seek support from. So that would be few things.
Sure. Thank you very much, Ram. I will come back to you. Vikas, sir, can I have your opening statements as well? I think you've heard our two panelists as well. So, can you join in the conversation from a point of view of an HR director as well, somebody who's responsible for making policies, and somebody who belongs to the community as well? So, how does that perfect placement happen? And talk about your journey, your struggles. How did you overcome? You're a hero for doing this. You absolutely are.
Thanks for bringing me in, Tanya, at this stage because I come from a genre where everything with who am I was supposed to be wrong. Now I start with my family, and I think I'm very dear to my family members. They are very dear to me, but their ability to accept sexuality was very limited. And I come from a typical, modern family based out in Delhi. I'm not talking of any village, but the thoughts were primitive and traditional. So right from the beginning, as they started getting hints on certain habits or behaviors of mine, they would also suggest me that they'll get me corrected, or there'll be a medicinal treatment given to me. So my psyche right from the beginning of my childhood is that I am wrong. This is what I'm doing is
Right.
wrong. It has to be corrected. While I still do it, I move ahead to psychologists who I consulted before I was forced to get married. I was literally forced to get married to a woman, and in those days, it was very difficult to even voice out your opinion and say what you feel. So I met a psychologist, and is from a very renowned medical institute, and I'll not name that. But this psychologist actually was helping me to change my sexual preference. and
How does that work? That does
help
that
me
work?
like a woman and say that, look, with certain changes in habits and behaviors, you can start liking a woman. And with obviously with all that conditioning, I was forced into a bad marriage, landed into a worse divorce, and came out of all that uh, rut. And you cannot believe, I was also exposed to medical practitioners in renowned hospitals. They have been proposing implants, penile implants, to have a sexual conduct artificially done when you don't feel that from inside, and just completely fake the act. So it's been officially done, unofficially to that extent, but officially to that extent, that these operations are being conducted in medical colleges. And luckily, with my own ability to counter or probe, I avoided that piece. I'm sure a lot of people go through all that, get themselves operated also. And worse is that after operation, you just realize your mind is different. It's not the body, it's the mind, right? So, and then I come to my workplace. I was a big entertainment factor all throughout my workplace, especially in the slightly informal gatherings where people are down with one or two drinks. They feel they have a right to talk about and entertain the group by talking about one person, and just call it a light moment, and just play with that, costing my whole next one night where I would not be able to sleep. So, that's been the journey I came out with, till I went to US for my education at Wharton School, where, I had a student who was along with me. She was a HR director with LA LGBTQ Corporation, and she was a lesbian herself. First time she helped me to come across, this whole, I realized that whatever I'm doing is right. You know, whatever I am is not wrong.
So that was that moment that you realized that there's nothing wrong with me. It's the world that's
Yeah,
seeing it all wrong.
and when she
Did that
told me about,
inspire some kind of confidence in you as well?
yeah,
That
so
must have been a big relief.
when she told me about all that, I realized that there's a lot of work happening in US with this corporation and other organizations, and a lot of awareness is happening across the world. By that time, we had not been legalized here in India, so they were working in China and other countries also. So I realized the whole world is moving in a very different direction, and I'm part of that. So that was a big change, and post that, I brought transformation in myself. Subsequently moved out of my organization, which was extremely closeted, at the cost of my job at a high level, at a senior level. I just moved out and started understanding workspaces in a different way, started working with DNI leaders. I had a lot of interactions with Ram. I remember sitting across me right here, and Srini, and in my own way, I started understand, how I can impact others and then indirectly impact me. And there I am sitting across you, back to my, full-time job, but, now very comfortable in the space I am.
Wow, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that story. That leads the way for our second round of questions as well. Thank you, Vikas. Manvinder sir, I'm going to come back to you again. You've heard the panelists, your fellow panelists as well. They've spoken about teen inclusion at workplace as well. So now, while Mr. Ram and Mr. Vikas are closely working with corporate India, you being a part of the community and being at a very influential point in your life where you are, what kind of policy changes would you suggest for organizations to create more robust policies for safeguarding the interest of the community at workplace?
See, for me, one of the importance for the community has always been empowerment. I've been always focusing on how I can empower the community. And when I talk about empowerment, one of the things which I always worked on is providing job opportunities and employment to the community to make them financially independent. That is one of the important things which I've been trying to work, and I've been also working on these issues with other corporates and other business houses, and how to bring about this inclusion. I've been part of the Pride Circle. Ram is here, and one of the panelists where I've attended. He has made me a participant and he made me a speaker there, and I've gone for these kind of their events and all. So I want to talk on two aspects of it. See, while it is important for the corporates to have a very LGBT friendly environment, it is also important to talk to the community as well. Many times, like, I've found one thing that our community, when I talk about the LGBTQIA community, most of us, we ourselves lack the confidence, and because of the fact that we are always told that we are doing something wrong, as we've heard the other panelists talk about their stories and their journey. And secondly, we are also not aware of our rights.
Yeah.
So it's important to educate the community about the rights. See, now there are so many judgments have come, laws have come, bills have been passed, but a lot of us are still, forget about anything else. Even if you ask anyone, how many of us have even read the Indian Constitution? We'll be surprised. Indian Constitution is like a Bible for us, for our country, where this is one of the best written constitutions in the world, which has given equal rights. And on the basis of this constitution, we were able to get this section 377 amended. So it's important that we know our rights, whether we so that we don't become target to or subject to discrimination at any place, workplace, or that matter, any place. Why should we have the right to fight for that, and we can challenge in the court of law in case we are made we are victimized for that. So that is something which I think from the community power point of view is important to educate them, to sensitize them, and to tell them about these issues.
When
from the
should
corporate
grooming
point
be
of view,
started,
definitely.
sir? Yes. Please go ahead.
See, I always believe that we have to find the root cause of any issue and start from the root. So these things should first of all be there in our education system. The basic knowledge,
Agreed.
awareness is absolutely missing in our education system. We don't even talk about sex education. So there's no education on LGBT issues at all. And it's very unfortunate that we come from, I always say, when I go out of India, I say, India is the land of Kama Sutra. The world's oldest encyclopedia is written in India, and yet we don't talk about sex. That's a very paradox situation. So it is the students of our country who should be taught, who should be told about our issues, because we don't know who are these students. Any one of them could be trans, they could be queer, they could be gay, lesbian. We don't know their sexuality, So let's start from the roots. Let's start from the beginning and educate them, so that when they come to age, they will automatically realize, or they will automatically.
And they won't go through the entire identity crisis
Exactly.
that a lot of people from the community go through.
Exactly. And not just that, even if you are not from the community, if you have the understanding when they
can be sensitive, absolutely.
Yeah, they will be already sensitized. We will not need to have all this sensitization workshops and programs and all these things which we are doing now. They will be already sensitized to handle HR policies, and to how to make the environment more friendly, so that there is equality for all. Then there's no there's no stigma and discrimination happening at workplace. Free and fair justice given to all the employees without violating any of the human rights. That's very important.
Absolutely. So maybe a suggestion for the corporate India as well. For people who have not been sensitized till this point, so now we're all working. How do we change the policies? Any suggestions? How do we create gender neutral spaces at work? How do we include that idea of sensitization, incept that idea of sensitization in a man's or a woman's mind who's probably 30, 35, 40, actually 40 plus, probably people in leadership positions, most of them. How do you now put that seed it's very difficult. How do we do that?
See, again I'm coming to the same point. It is only education and creating that awareness, because most of us are still having a lot of misconceptions in our minds about our issues. I am really surprised that Vikas had to go through all that of the at the hand of these doctors, so-called doctors, medical practitioners, who are totally unaware of so many of our issues. So this education has to be given, because anyone, for whether it is a person from the medical field or from the corporate, or anyone, needs a proper education sensitization to understand. One of the things which I always do when I meet somebody is that I said, please come in our place and see, step into our shoes and see what are the struggles we are facing. Then you will be able to understand us better. Don't think from the point of view of yourself. Come into our shoes and then see. Then you will realize that where, if we are doing anything wrong or if we are doing right, and why are we being subject to so much of torture for no fault of ours. So that understanding needs to be given.
Ji sir, absolutely. I do agree with that. Mr. Ram, I'm going to move on to you as well. I think a very important takeaway from Manvendra sir's answer here was education at the grassroots level. And I want to share one little incident that just comes to mind. When we started to observe now, when I was building my editorial team a year and a half back, so I hired one boy, and when I was interviewing him, and the interview went well, and I'd known him, he'd interned for me some time back. So he said, "Ma'am, everything said and done, there is one thing I want you to know, and then you make your decision on hiring." I said, "What?" He said, "Ma'am, I'm gay. So if that bothers you, then I will just walk out of the interview." So I said, "All right, that's all right. I mean, that's your personal choice. There's nothing I should do about it, and I'm going to deal with you how you are in your work. That's all that matters." And then eventually, I developed this very sweet friendship with this boy, and he was the one who brought into light the entire situation of the community. He helped me understand the community. He helped me understand people. He helped me understand different men and women. And one day I remember he asked me, "Ma'am, how many girls have you dated?" And I was not shocked or angry. I was just thinking, back in my day, I didn't even know that was an option. And now I'm so angry about it. Had somebody told me, I might have given it a thought, I wouldn't have had to deal with men. I mean, without sounding very condescending here, but as a joke I said. So anyway, the point is that education has to be there. That's very important. How much do you agree with that, Ram sir? And just a couple of suggestions that you would give to the corporate India as well.
So we live in a heteronormative world, and what that basically means is every single thing around is built in a way which gives the message that heterosexuality is the only normal. Your parents are heterosexuals, most of your siblings, friends are heterosexual. Whether you watch an ad, whether you watch a movie, whether you read a short story, a poem, or a love story, everything is about a boy and a girl at the end of it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
The whole world makes you believe that that's the only possibility and the only thing that is normal. And hence, a lot of LGBT kids grow with a lot of self-doubt. That is something wrong with me, right? Instead of, and hence that's called internalized homophobia, when you start hating yourself, that why am I feeling differently? Why am I attracted to this friend of mine who is a boy? But do realize this is nothing as a fault of the person, because it's just that we are not aware that sexuality is not just heterosexuality. There are all kinds of sexualities, right? So, and it's very important that we bring that education so that LGBT kids don't have to struggle. Their parents know that this is also normal. There are people who are homosexual and have great careers, great lives, everything else which they want for the child is still a possibility, right? So that friends and school teachers are aware that this is called bullying and harassment, that forcing or making fun of people because they are gay is not accepted. So that doctors know that there's a statement from the Indian Psychiatric Society which says that homosexuality is not a deformity and abnormality, and hence there's no treatment. And practicing such treatment is, in a sense, illegal, right? And it's prohibited. But then you still hear Vikas' story that there are people who are still practicing it, and then parents still take their kids to such places.
Renowned institutions encouraging that practice.
Absolutely. And importance of education is language. What language we use when we talk about the LGBT community, like
Very
when we
important.
say
Absolutely.
this is your choice to be gay, it's not my choice to be gay. I'm just gay, right? Uh, did people choose to be heterosexual? Nobody made that choice. You start as you grew up, you realize whom you're getting attracted to, whom you're having crushes for. It's a male or a female, and that's how you realize your sexuality. You don't choose your sexuality. So when we say that gay people choose to be gay, that makes their sexuality something like, huh, iska to preference hai. Preference is something which can shift. Choices are something which is optional, and hence all that force around try to change that preference, try to change that choice. If I give you pain or pleasure, maybe you'll choose differently. The whole concept,
Right.
when we change that language, that it is sexuality, it is not sexual preference, then we also understand that, okay, like naturally I was felt attracted to women, my friend feels attracted to male. That's how it is. That's what sexuality is, right? So language is very important.
Who is responsible for inculcating this in a child or in a fully grown human like you and me?
All we love to outsource responsibility to someone else all the time, but I think as a society, I think we're all very responsible and play a very important role, that we educate ourselves about lived realities of other people, which is not my experience, right? I am gay and hence I know about LGBT plus people. Maybe there's other community, like there's a person with disability community I don't know much about, but if I engage and have that conversation, I get to learn the right language, learn how to support, how to ask the right questions. I think it's important that all of us take that responsibility to spend 1 hour in a week, just read something about LGBT plus community. I think it's important that all of us take that responsibility. And definitely, because when we talk about school education programs, right, the pushback doesn't come from students as much, because, and it's also that when we educate students about LGBT sexuality, it's not that they're going to choose differently, because it is not a choice. They will just have a better vocabulary to understand that this is also possible, and they don't have to live with self doubt and self hatred for a really long time, and don't have to do all that damage on their self confidence, because every single time it chips away the self confidence, it chips away the self esteem, and then we're just trying to rebuild them at a later point of time, which is unnecessary, right? Uh, and the pushback comes from parents of heterosexual kids. So I think if
Right.
parents are educated about it, that yes, there my friend, my child would have LGBT students, and it's fine. LGBT friends, it is fine, right? I
Right.
think not talking about it is what creates a lot more problems than talking about it. Coming to workplaces, I think some of the very basic things would be a non-discrimination policy, which acknowledges that there is a sexual orientation and gender identity-based harassment and bullying that can happen in the workplace, and it
Hmm.
should call it out very clearly. It's important that your equal opportunity employment policy calls out these terms. It would be great if you can also support, like we cover all our cisgender employees and their partners. We can also cover the same-sex partner for our employees, right? For the medical insurance coverage. So from a policy perspective, important that your harassment policy is gender neutral, because harassment can happen across male, female, male, all kinds of spectrum, right? And now we also have a lot of non-binary people who identify as non-binary. So having a dress code
Right.
which is not very tied to the gender of the person, right? Those are few things which you
Hmm.
definitely need to do as an organization. Access to a gender neutral restroom at the workplace. If someone is transitioning, what restroom do they use? Like some of the very basic things which most of us don't have to think twice about can become such a big hurdle for people from the LGBT plus community.
Absolutely, absolutely. Some amazing suggestions there, Mr. Ram. Thank you very much. I think a very important first step is definitely acknowledgement, and then being sensitive to each and every aspect of it and giving it a real thought. That also leads me to my next question, which I'm going to take to Mr. Vikas. I think building on from what Ram sir has said, I interact with human resource leaders on almost a daily basis across India and South Asia. Now, I've tried to raise this topic, this story with a lot of them a lot of times. So I'll tell you a couple of responses that I generally get. So, the most common response is there is no need for a separate policy for the community. In our organization, we do not distinguish between anyone, no gender, so there is no need. We don't acknowledge. That's the first common answer. And the second common answer is sorry, not comfortable talking about it because there probably is no policy, in their organization. So, Vikas, how do you think we can change that? And you being in the leadership position, what kind of work have you done to change this mindset?
So a very relevant question, Tanya, and I also was hearing Ram and I could clearly classify my easy tasks as a CHRO and tough tasks, right? So obviously some of the answers that you get are quick, easy tasks that people want to pick by not talking about it or not dealing with it and just taking a way out, right? So even if I talk of equal rights, communication, code of conduct, right? I talk of physical infrastructure like a gender neutral washroom. I talk of benefits and policies in support of the same gender marriage, right? Uh,
Right.
I'm all these are removing the conscious side of the bias, right? Which is relatively today's environment when you're talking of an organization which is inclusive in nature is becoming predominant. And when you have organizations examples shared, people are progressively looking at some of these. And for a CHRO, when I'm sitting on this table, this becomes slightly easy task for me. Coming out, as an inclusive organization, getting people on board and getting these practices. Now, the challenge for a CHRO today is the unconscious bias, which we need to plug in. And I think organizations which help in creating awareness for us helps in that. I'm just talking of unconscious bias, like a need for a LGBTQ person, a sexual need is propagated in a very wrong way, and
Absolutely.
that conscious bias, that is some very unconscious thought in people's brain that a sexual need for a LGBTQ is much higher than the, a so-called straight person. So,
Right.
and I have faced that, and I have held people who have come and complained to me as a HR leader that people feel that for me, people are easy prey. Now, people should not spend too much time with me. People should not be engaging too many conversations with me because they also would be threatened for something which I can do, but I don't know what I'll do. So those unconscious biases as an HR leader, I need to get into the skin and find out how to do. They could be jokes, and jokes can also be offensive to any woman versus a man. But any joke which is around sexuality or leading indirectly to this could also be very damaging for people. So me as an HR leader, how to teach people what to be communicating in the office on the WhatsApp messages, what jokes to be cracked, what kind of laughs to be done, your gestures, body language is very, very important. Now, other is
Right.
questions. I go back to the interview panels and, we coach people to ask right questions in interviews. People used to ask women about when are they planning kids, and I think they have been corrected very, very you cannot ask this question, right, to women.
Right.
Similarly, asking now about when are you planning to get married or why are you not married, why don't you have kids, or anything of that sort have been completely removed. So we teach managers not to get into those subjects because managers are always, worried that, okay, if we hire this person, that person will continue for long or not? And in wake of that, they will ask certain questions, right? To know more about the
Right. Right.
family, you will ask, "Oh, how many kids you have?" And the person says, "Oh, I'm not even married." But why are you not married? So,
So,
those
Vikas, what is the right way to put this and appropriate way to ask somebody about their sexual preference or their orientation in an interview just for knowledge? Because now we are openly acknowledging. So, how does an HR head, how is he supposed to ask? What is an
I'm
appropriate way?
my first thought is that about I don't get into this subject at all. Why should I get into this subject and ask person who do you like? Rather make the person comfortable in terms of saying that, look, we are an equal employer, we treat everybody equally. Diversity questions could be, rather I would counter questions. I'll put counter questions in terms of how do you think you can manage a person who's not speaking the same language? How do you think you can manage a person in your team who's not from your region? You know, uh, what is your idea about creating diversity in teams? What are positives and what are negatives? So my questions will be more around, how the thought process is, diverse. Because for me, the more thought process the diverse is, the more productivity will come in from that particular person because that person will accept diversity. Rather than checking on the sexual preference per se. And also, sometimes, uh, those unconscious attempts to make other person feel over comfortable also are the areas that we coach people not to get into, because that may make people further uncomfortable by getting into those areas. So uh, ensuring that we have right objectives towards building diversity, and sticking to those objectives when we are asking those questions help us to coach people better. But journey in progress, because uh, uh, you know uh, there are people who make mistakes. Now how you reprimand people, how you correct people is also. So I would take help of a lot of organizations today who are working in this space of creating sensitization at workplace, developing better diverse culture at workplace, not with a stick in
Like
hand and
something
creating.
what Mr. Ram is doing is right circle.
Yeah, yeah, and more of culture than right or wrong. It's nothing all right or wrong, but how you can build a better culture, better diverse culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that thought. Manvendra sir, I'm going to come back to you. And my team has just sent me this question which somebody has asked us live on LinkedIn. And I will take that question up with you, sir. So Mr. Anthony Chetri, he says inclusion of LGBT community does not stop with just acceptance, but it does go beyond that. The loneliness that a person of the community goes through is huge. So maybe what he's intending to ask here is, how do we deal with a situation like this immediately after we've come out and it's really not, somebody's really not accepted in the society. You've got your job, you've got to move on with your life along with managing your identity as well. So maybe sir, आप हमें कुछ आइडिया दे सकते हैं कि कैसे उस सिचुएशन को डील किया जाए इन हिंदी?
हाँ, देखिए, सबसे पहले तो खुद को स्वीकार करना बहुत सबसे बड़ी बात है। जब भी कोई व्यक्ति अपने सेक्सुअल आइडेंटिटी को लेकर कंफ्यूज या जो भी है, तो सेल्फ एक्सेप्टेंस जिसको बोलते हैं वो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट है। और हम कौन सी आइडेंटिटी से बिलोंग करते हैं, क्या हम गे हैं, हम ट्रांस हैं, हम क्वेयर हैं, वो भी एक आइडेंटिटी जानना बहुत जरूरी है। वो सबसे पहला कदम मैं कहता हूँ जरूरी है। दूसरा कि हमको एक सोशल सपोर्ट सिस्टम बनाने की जरूरत है, क्योंकि क्या होता है कि हम सोचते हैं कि हम इस तरह के अकेले ही हैं, हमारे जैसे कोई और नहीं है, हमारे ऐसे कोई और मित्र नहीं है, हम माँ बाप के साथ में ये बात शेयर नहीं कर सकते, फैमिली के साथ नहीं कर सकते। तो एक सोशल सपोर्ट की बहुत जरूरत थी, क्योंकि इसके अभाव में क्या होता है, काफी लोगों को डिप्रेशन में आ जाते हैं, कई लोग को मानसिक तकलीफें हो जाती है। क्योंकि मैं पूरे दुनिया में घुमा हूँ और मैंने देखा है कि बाहर आउट ऑफ इंडिया में देयर इज ऑलवेज हैज बीन अ लैक ऑफ सोशल सपोर्ट सिस्टम। क्योंकि हमारे भारत में एक्चुअली देखा जाए तो बहुत अच्छा सिस्टम है, क्योंकि हम पैदाइशी हमको जॉइंट फैमिली में रहने की आदत है, तो वी गेट दैट सपोर्ट फ्रॉम विद इन द फैमिली। लेकिन जब हमको नहीं मिलता है तो देन वी टेंड टू गेट लोनली, और हम सोचते हम अकेले हैं, हम कैसे जी पाएंगे। तो ये सब चीज को बहुत ध्यान में रखना पड़ेगा जब भी कोई व्यक्ति को कम आउट होना है, चाहे वो बाहर की दुनिया से नहीं हो, चाहे अपने फ्रेंड्स के साथ हो या अपने से ही हो। लेकिन ये एक सामाजिक तौर पर ये एक सपोर्ट की बहुत जरूरत है।
एब्सोल्युटली सर, बिल्कुल अग्री करती हूँ आपसे। और एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सवाल जो मेरे दिमाग में भी आता है, और बहुत लोगों ने जब हम इस सेशन को प्रमोट कर रहे थे मुझसे पूछा भी था कि मैं ये अपने पैनलिस्ट से पूछूं। सर, देयर आर सो मेनी आइडेंटिटीज। एक जो कम्युनिटी है, इट्स नॉट ओनली रिस्ट्रिक्टेड टू LGBTQIA, देयर आर लाइक 100 आइडेंटिटीज। और अब आई थिंक राम सर ने भी बोला नॉन बाइनरी, एंड देयर इज अ वेरी ब्यूटीफुल मूवी आल्सो दैट आई रिसेंटली सॉ मेड ऑन दैट, इट स्टार्स दिव्या दत्ता। सर, बहुत ही डिफरेंट कॉन्सेप्ट है, बहुत सारे लोग क्लियर नहीं है। समबडी लाइक मी जो एक्सेप्टिंग है, स्ट्रेट एक्सेप्टिंग पर्सन, उसको भी समझ नहीं आ रहा है। सो व्हेन आई एम नॉट क्लियर, दूसरों को मैं क्या समझाऊं? और इसी तरह से इंडिया में बहुत सारे लोग हैं, इंक्लूडिंग सोसाइटी के कम्युनिटी के अंदर के लोग, वो भी बहुत ज्यादा जेंडर आइडेंटिटी क्राइसिस से डील करते हैं। तो उसका क्या सोल्यूशन है? हाउ डू वी आइडेंटिफाई people from the community, and how do we identify ourselves in this chaos?
देखिए मैं समझता हूँ कि कम्युनिटी से भी ज्यादा एक एलआई का जो एक रोल है ना, वो बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट है. We need allies in all spheres, in all stakeholders in our society, whether it's coming from the students, from parents, at workplace, at corporate level, at political level, religious level, education level. जो भी आप लेवल पकड़ लो वहाँ we need allies. ये allies होंगे ना, वो हमको हमारे मुद्दों को स्प्रेड करने में और हमको समझने में वो ज्यादा मदद करेंगे. इवन अभी हमने पेरेंट्स की बात की, राम ने पेरेंट्स के बारे में बात किया, तो मैं कहना चाहूंगा पेरेंट्स में हमको ऐसे और फॉर्चुनेटली अभी भारत में एक बहुत अच्छी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन की स्थापना हुई है जिसका नाम है स्वीकार, जो पेरेंट्स द्वारा बनाई गई. तो अगर पेरेंट्स को दूसरे पेरेंट्स को समझाना है तो वी हैव टू यूज दिस ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, दिस सपोर्ट सिस्टम टू सी हाउ एक माँ एक दूसरी माँ से बात करेगी तो वो माँ को ज्यादा इसके बारे में समझ आएगा, इंस्टेड ऑफ अ कम्युनिटी पर्सन एक्सप्लेनिंग टू अ मदर. तो हमको ये इस एलाइशिप का उपयोग करके, और we need to create more and more allies, that's very important in order to mainstream our issues in the society.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. Thank you very much for those thoughts, sir. Ram sir, I'm going to move.
I just wanted to cover that topic which you talked about. There are so many identities, right? We did not start on day one and learned A to Z, right? We struggled with the A for a really long time when we moved. Then we moved to the BCD and all of that. I think it's important we start with the basics, like sexuality, gender identity, क्या होता है, LGBT सीख लें. उसके बाद धीरे-धीरे we can always learn new and new terms. We don't have to learn everything about the community, right? Only हमारे हिसाब से रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में what all do we need to know? Like आपके pronouns क्या हैं और आपके pronoun ऐसा क्यों है? आप कैसे identify करते हो? आपको he बोलूं, she बोलूं, they बोलूं, क्या बोलूं, right? That is the basic thing, right? So I think it's not that we have to get overwhelmed कि oh my god, there's so many terms, QIA, अभी ये क्या होता है, अभी non-binary क्या है? It can be overwhelming. It's a lot of new terms which we have not used, has not come to your day-to-day users. But I think start slow and you will find more and more reasons to get to know about people, because at the end of the day you're just trying to know another person. Like आप बंगाली हो, आप पंजाबी हो, आप क्या हो, आप पंजाबी में there are hundred of varieties of what kind of cooking you do, what kind of things you do, right? So the same within the community also, there's various shades of sexuality, gender mixture. So I think let's start with the first step of just knowing the basics, and then we can always find more ways to learn more.
Absolutely, do agree with that. And I think इस तरह के workshops also, if day one orientation say from schools to colleges to workplace, if they can be done, because a lot of people now are at workspaces who have no idea, who've grown up with a completely different mindset and have not been a part of the community as well. So they were living completely in oblivion, and now this entire plethora of information has been bombarded, and it's really confusing and really overwhelming as well. So what do you suggest, Ram sir? How do we go about this, and how do you think we can make India champion in LGBTQIA rights? We are moving towards a new India. There is no doubt about this. The historic decision was very progressive. What now?
I think everything is confusing in the beginning. Even if you try to use an Excel or open an app, it is confusing. That's why we take some time to figure it out. So I think it's okay to be confused. It's okay to realize that I don't know anything about this and this is very overwhelming. But hang on. I mean, there are more and more enough methods, not just reading stuff. There are movies to watch, there are stories to read, there are people to talk to. There's so many ways to educate yourself. So there are plenty of opportunities. I think India definitely home of one of the largest LGBT plus population in the world, I think has a pivotal role to play in transforming what inclusion could look like. And for an instance, I would say we played that part a bit here. Like this year, we also did something called 21 Days Ally Challenge. It was a virtual game for a period of 21 days for the Pride Month, which is June. For every single day, allies had to do one small thing, one small task. Could be reading a coming out story, watching a short film, reading about the laws of the country, and every time you complete a task, you get points for it. And this becomes a global competition. So you're competing with people around the world in becoming an amazing ally. So you're getting points, you're getting a rewards at the end of it, and you're also learning in a fun way. And we had 12,750 people from 58 countries participate in this. So I think that was a solution from India, which went to the world around how we can really engage allies, because lot many times the people who are really passionate and want to be allies, but they don't know how to be an ally. हम कर क्या सकते हैं, हम कैसे support करें? So this was built with that in mind. So encourage everyone to take part in the next year, the 2021, which is, I think, going back to the world and showing, hey, because diversity and inclusion is not new to India. We are a very diverse country. We know to work and live with differences. So we definitely have a model that works. We just need to integrate the LGBT plus spectrum into this and show the world how it is
Absolutely.
done.
Exactly, and lead the way. I think Ram, one very important takeaway from what you've said is, I think it's very important to first start with the topic of sexuality. That's what should be introduced in schools, students. When you're growing up, probably when you hit puberty around 12, 13, that is the first thing one child should be taught. It should be at the school level, it should be probably at the parents level as well. Now we're moving towards more progressive times. So I think sexuality is what you need to understand first, and then I think these are all subsets. What orientation you choose, or what you cannot choose, what orientation comes to you naturally. I think that's what is very important. Because moving on to you, same question. Can you share your thoughts, please?
Yeah, so I'll share a very practical example. And I was subjected to a mentoring program sponsored by Publicis Sapient, and I followed the same route within my organization. Identify a right mentor within your organization gives you a lot of ally support. Also brings in that ecosystem of diversity. And I'm reading, how to sensitize and make open communication. This is the best way when you open a concept and identify people who are ready to volunteer themselves to become a mentor for people who are part of this community. Now, mentoring would have a lot of do's and don'ts, but this brings in a lot of perspective of what you are together trying to achieve, right? And guide people on what they could help achieve the person, not only the corporate or official objectives, but objectives to come across in the personal life, because people who are from this community, like I come from, have a lot of family issues, they have a lot of mental issues. So I think also guide them to right person who's a professional to be able to handle. And I remember one of the mentors actually could not handle the mental anxiety of that person, and actually guided that lady to a very good psychologist who could manage that. So I think a mentor at office really helps you to open up. That's point number one, which is a very predominant practice which can help you create that awareness also. Second is also to bring a lingo in the organization. So whenever we speak a language, it comes out of our vision, mission, our guiding principles. Guiding principles is another way I've seen very progressively handled in organizations, where your guiding principles are when you are also assessed in your performance, they are in your behavior, they are they become your complete ecosystem when you operate. So guiding principles should talk of diversity and inclusion as one of the subjects, in one way or the other. Can, help empathize people with, like, treating everybody equally, being sensitive to what people are, and also, coming out of their baggages and looking at things forward. Uh, a very key objective of me as an HR leader is to improve productivity of organization. And I see diversity inclusion as a very clear component in running that productivity. So when it is part of my board meeting or board discussion, it becomes very relevant. Otherwise, it's a subject which is lying aside. So these are the ways, I would say very progressively, organizations can think about making it as a part of your day-to-day ecosystem, and not just making it a cosmetic affair, or just making it an affair for a certain occasion which comes once in a year.
Yeah, absolutely. So it has to be, what you're saying essentially, it has to be a part of your boardroom conversation. It has to be a part of your vision, your mission of the organization as well. And one small suggestion, if I might politely interject here, is since all of you are leaders in your own spaces, I think some psychological counseling at workplace could also go a long way if you, as leaders of your organizations, could have these sessions for everyone in the organizations, and also especially if you've identified people from the community. I think maybe for somebody who's transitioning, that would be a very helpful and very inclusive workspace as well, because people do that kind of thing for people who are probably going through a divorce or who've lost somebody very dear to them, when it's a very difficult time in their life. So this might really help in identifying themselves and also doing their transition, whatever is required at this point in time. So maybe that's one suggestion you can take from us as well. Now, we are running really short on time, but I do have another 3-4 minutes for a closing round of statements from all of you. So, Manvendra sir, I'll go first to you. Just quickly, your thoughts as to where we are now, and where do you see India in another 5 years? Do you really see a gender neutral, sensitized workplace in corporate India? Do you really see us moving forward and being progressive for the rights of the LGBTQIA community?
Yeah, Tanya, taking from what you shared last about the importance of counseling, I will talk about that first, because I am myself a trained counselor. I do a lot of counseling especially on the LGBT issues. And I think it's a very important thing, because I'm right now working on how to train counselors in schools also, because that's the time, as you mentioned, during the time of puberty is when we try to discover our sexuality, and we don't know whom to go to when we have any questions. And that's where the role of a counselor becomes important. And now I'm trying to develop community counselors, counselors from the community itself, to be in these schools or institutions. So one of the good things I want to talk about in my closing remarks is that I see a bright future in India. Why? Because coming back to the first thing which I mentioned is find out the root cause of all these issues, and that is education. And nowadays I'm seeing a lot of students taking interest in our work. I keep getting, every week I get invitations. Even now, when I'm not able to travel, I'm doing so many virtual platforms, education to schools. First it was colleges and universities. Now schools are approaching me. And I've been invited to so many TED Talks in India. I've done 13 TED Talks in India, and all my 13 have been only on LGBT issues. So the students are the future of our country, and of our culture, or the society for that matter, for anywhere in the world. And if they are given the right information and guidance and knowledge, then they will be much better aware future of our country, and we can have hope on them. And that for that matter, if we talk about the corporate world, then that corporate includes having these aware students growing up and being part of any corporate or a business house. So we would definitely, the next generation I'm seeing would be much better parents, would be much better citizens, whatever they are. They could be, he or she could be the prime minister of the country, president, chief justice, doctor, lawyer. So that's why I see a future in India.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree with you more. That's the India we should all be rooting for. Thank you very much, sir. Ram sir, can I move on to you?
I have just one thing to say. Don't be a bystander, engage. If you think that you don't know anything about this community, there's internet. Almost everyone has a smartphone today. There's a lot of content available online. Just browse through, search for LGBT hashtags. You'll come across something of interest. Read a bit, learn a bit, and educate yourself a bit. And ask. It's okay to not know. It's okay to not know the right terminology or the right difference between LGBT. It's absolutely all right. But so feel free to reach out to people and ask that question, that I am new to this. Where do I find the right amount of information, or how do I talk to whom to talk to, right? And second thing is, don't be a bystander to bullying. If someone is being bullied for being LGBT, don't just be there and say, "Ye to bahut bura, aisa hona nahi chahiye." Take a stand and talk about it. If you are in a school or a space where you can report to a senior authority, go ahead, do that. Just don't be bystander, because by not saying something, you're kind of encouraging that behavior. And that joke is just a moment of laughter for everyone else, but that joke is going to haunt that individual for a much longer time, and sit with them for a much longer time and do much more damage. So please take a stand. Thank you.
Very, very progressive thought there. Don't be a bystander. Very important takeaway. Thank you very much, Mr. Ram. Mr. Vikas, your closing remarks, please.
Yeah, so 3 points come to my mind as far as the organization initiative is concerned. One is that I'll definitely want to partner with parents, young parents and parents who are going to become parents in future. Uh, Stop getting biased on your children's brain. You know, uh, right from the beginning, blue color is for a boy and pink is for a girl. You start with that thought. Cricket is supposed to be the flair of boy. Every boy has to play cricket. So I think the parents' counseling will really help us to build this future much more unbiased. And unconsciously, parents are building those blocks in people's brains, and children cannot speak out openly to them because of those
Right.
biases. So my attempt would be within my own community of employees, counsel the parents. As point number one. Second is, I think we learn from each other. So in our own isolated space, we cannot learn. We create community within multiple organizations which are operating in similar industry or other industries. We get together our DNI leaders and our HR leaders and try to collaborate and create a common platform. We learn from each other. There are a lot of good practices in one organization versus other, and we have a lot of practices we learn from global organizations. Like I went, and when I learned from a lot of global organizations, I got to know about myself from US. So similarly, I think that learning platform as organizations we love to create, we meet once in a while, exchange our thoughts, could have a mediator, to help us to exchange this information and come across. My last but not the least, I think the kind of work that you're doing, Observe Now, I think our ability to give this time and participate there as leaders can help us to propagate our voice so much. I'm very happy today all the attendees who are attending have come across so many thoughts from three of leaders like us, right? And so this is a very good platform for awareness. I see that getting recorded, and I don't know, tomorrow there will be multiple people who will be hearing us, right? So I think these are the three attempts as corporate. I would definitely like to project and intrude and also invest into a future which looks much better for people who are coming in. We are already there, but people who are coming in, I'll like to prepare them for this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for those thoughts, Vikas. Once again, I think I'm also relatively new to this entire space, and today has been a very good learning for me as well. I have had some really good takeaways from these very diverse set of leaders that I've put on the panel. All three of you come from different walks of life, have done different work for the community, and shared really amazing thoughts here with us as well. I think a few important takeaways from today is, I think, Manvendra sir, your thought about building allies, I think that's brilliant. I think that's one very good step that everyone should take. I think that would really help them go a long way in their journey. And of course, Ram sir, what you said about taking a stand, that's really important as well. And also the fact that it's all right to not know, but you can read. Every day you could read, you could watch a movie, you could just literally Google the hashtags, and your 101 stories of coming out, that's beautiful as well. So I think people like you at this point in time, all three of you, in your own spaces, need to be much more loud and out and about, and keep educating people as well and answering as many questions as possible. That's very important as well. And Vikas sir, amazing journey, and I'm actually very sorry to hear some of the things that you said, and I'm sorry that you've been put through situations like that. But it's so brave of you to share things like that, and also put in everyone's mind that things cannot be changed like that. This is not the way you treat a person. So your strength, your resilience, and the fact that you are now in such a big leadership position and doing work for the community and work for everyone, that speaks volumes about the kind of individual you've become in your struggle. So thank you very much. And this is an initiative that Observe Now will keep working on. We will keep doing these discussions. We'll keep bringing leaders from the community, from different walks of our lives, and answer all our questions and raise and spread awareness about the community as much as possible. The entire goal of this live story is to generate awareness and help people understand that India needs to be more progressive and more inclusive. That being said, thank you very much, Mr. Ram, Mr. Manvendra, Mr. Vikas. Thank you for joining me. And I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for having us, and kudos on the initiative. Thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the attendees.